From a young age, many women are taught to equate male attention with love. They're told that if he likes you, he'll pursue you. If he doesn't call, it's because he doesn't care. If he disappears, it's because he never valued you. It's a deeply ingrained narrative, passed down from generations of well-meaning mothers, media messages, and romantic storytelling. The underlying message? If he's not reaching out, he's not interested. But this idea is dangerously incomplete. Over the years, I've worked with countless women, smart, emotionally aware, successful, who come to me with the same question: why isn't he reaching out? And often they already think they know the answer. He must not care. But when I ask them how they responded the last time a man didn't message them for a day or two, the truth unravels. They panicked, checked their phones obsessively, replayed old conversations, built entire scenarios in their heads, maybe even sent a few texts to check in. And there's the key. It's not that women can't read the signs. It's that they've been taught to misread silence altogether. Silence has been sold as a rejection, as proof of disinterest, as a red flag. But what if silence isn't an absence of feeling, but a language in itself? What if male silence, while sometimes a signal of disengagement, is often something far more complex? You see, a man's silence doesn't always mean "I don't care." Sometimes it means "I'm overwhelmed," or "I'm unsure," or "I need space to figure out what I feel." And other times, yes, it does mean disinterest. And understanding how to distinguish between the two is where your power lies. What no one tells you is that most men haven't been taught emotional fluency. Society conditions boys to toughen up, man up, and deal with it. Vulnerability is labeled as weakness. Emotional reflection is dismissed, while women are encouraged to talk about their feelings. Many men are taught to bury theirs. So when stress, confusion, or emotional discomfort arises, many men don't talk through it. They withdraw, not always as a conscious choice, but as a coping mechanism. This can be maddening to women who value communication, who want connection, who find intimacy in talking things through. They wonder, why can't he just say what's going on? Why does he go quiet instead? Because silence is often his processing mode. This doesn't mean it's okay to be left in the dark without explanation. Emotional maturity requires communication. But understanding this default helps you stop interpreting every quiet period as a crisis. And more importantly, it helps you protect your own peace while you wait to see whether this is just a pause or a pattern. And here's the truth that many women need to hear. The problem isn't that he went silent. The problem is how quickly you lose your center when he does. Have you ever caught yourself spiraling after 2 days of no response? Obsessively replaying your last message? Wondering if you said something wrong? Trying to figure out what you did to cause the silence? This is where we begin to surrender our power. Because what you think is love is often anxiety. What you call connection is often emotional dependence. You're not actually responding to him. You're responding to the part of you that feels abandoned when someone pulls away. This is where stoicism comes in. Not as a way to shut off your emotions or become cold and indifferent, but as a way to remain centered no matter what chaos exists outside of you. Stoicism is the ability to hold your peace, not because you've stopped caring, but because you care more about your inner world than someone else's behavior. And here's a hard truth. Many men, consciously or not, will pull away to see what you'll do. Will you chase? Will you fall apart? Will you need them to feel okay? And if the answer is yes, they've just learned that they hold emotional power over you. Not because they deserve it, but because you gave it to them. This is what breaks my heart most. To see brilliant women, warriors in every area of life, become small in the presence of uncertainty from a man. Women who make big decisions in business, raise families alone, lead with power in the workplace, suddenly unable to sleep, eat, or focus because a man didn't text them back. This is not your fault. You've been conditioned this way. Conditioned to believe that if you don't get a response, something is wrong with you. That if he's not texting, it's because you're not enough. That if he pulls away, you need to do more. But here's the reframe that changes everything. His silence isn't a command to do more. It's an invitation to do less chasing and more returning to yourself. Silence is your cue to ask, where have I placed too much of my worth in his hands? Because this is the paradox. When you make peace with silence, when you learn to stay still in the face of uncertainty, something incredible happens. Your energy shifts. You stop being reactive. You stop texting just to get a reply. You stop obsessing over someone else's actions and start focusing on your own alignment. And the best part? When he returns, because many do, he doesn't find a woman who waited, pacing and hoping. He finds a woman who lived, a woman who didn't crumble, who didn't lose herself, who didn't need him to be whole. That shift, he feels it instantly. Because a woman who doesn't chase is powerful. A woman who doesn't beg is magnetic. A woman who doesn't shrink in the face of silence is unforgettable. And when you realize that you can be that woman, not because of a man, but in spite of him, everything begins to change. So the next time silence arrives at your door, don't panic. Don't react. Don't fill the void with desperate energy. Instead, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what needs my attention right now? Because the truth is this. Every moment you spend trying to decode him is a moment you're not investing in yourself. And you, your growth, your goals, your healing, your joy, deserve far more of your energy than a man who's choosing not to communicate. That's not heartlessness. That's sovereignty. So what do you actually do when he doesn't reach out? You pause. You don't act from anxiety. You don't text just to get a response. You don't invent stories about what his silence might mean. Instead, you return, not to him, but to yourself. Because here's the quiet truth about power. It's not loud, not desperate, not performative. Real power is the calm confidence that says, I don't need to chase anything that's meant for me. But let's be honest, silence can feel like abandonment, especially if you're someone who grew up equating attention with affection. If you were taught that love is loud, consistent, and constant. If you're someone who has always filled silence with effort, just to prove you're worthy of being kept. This is the moment when stoicism becomes more than a theory. It becomes your tool. Not for suppression, but for self-possession. And here's what most people won't tell you about it. Stoicism doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop allowing your feelings to hijack your center. It's the discipline of emotional maturity. The ability to feel everything, yet act from grounded clarity, not reactive chaos. Because silence, especially from someone you care about, is triggering. It brings up old fears. It invites you to revisit every insecurity. Am I too much? Not enough? Did I say something wrong? Did I ruin it? This is where you meet your patterns. This is where you meet your wounds. But more importantly, this is where you meet your choice. Do I let the silence define my worth? Or do I let it reveal where my worth needs reinforcing? Because every time you resist the urge to chase clarity from someone who isn't offering it, you are telling the universe, I trust myself. I trust that I don't need to beg, plead, or explain. I trust that anything that requires me to abandon my self-respect isn't love. Now let's talk about what happens next. After the silence, after the space, after the internal tug of war. Let's say he comes back, because often he will. Not because you chased him, not because you reminded him of your worth, but because you didn't. You gave him space, and in doing so, gave yourself room to breathe, to grow, to recenter. And when he returns, he comes back to a woman with stories to tell, with joy in her life that wasn't paused, with passion that wasn't dimmed, with radiance that didn't depend on his attention. And that shift, he notices. Because energy doesn't lie. When a woman has kept living in his absence, it changes the entire dynamic. She's no longer waiting. She's choosing. This is where things get powerful and honest. Sometimes, his silence was just a moment of emotional retreat. He needed time. He needed space. He wasn't sure what he felt. And now he's back. In that case, you get to decide, not react, whether his way of handling things works for you. Because understanding someone's emotional process doesn't mean you're obligated to accept it forever. Let me repeat that. You can understand why a man goes silent. You can have compassion for his processing style. But you also get to decide if that pattern is compatible with your emotional needs. Understanding does not equal tolerance. Empathy is not submission. So many women confuse patience with self-abandonment. They stay emotionally available to someone who disappears. They wait and wait and wait and call it loyalty. But often it's just fear of letting go. Here's where your personal inventory comes in. Ask yourself, do I want to be with someone who processes conflict or stress by vanishing? Can I be in a relationship where communication is inconsistent? Am I accepting breadcrumbs because I'm afraid there won't be a full meal? These are the hard questions that restore your power. Because sometimes silence is not a pause, it's a pattern. And patterns, my love, are where truth lives. If a man consistently disappears when things get emotional, if he retreats every time connection deepens, if he leaves you guessing more than he leaves you feeling secure, then his silence isn't a one-time thing. It's his emotional style. And your job isn't to decode it. It's to ask if you want to live with it. Here's the emotional breakthrough. Most women have after doing the inner work. They realize that love isn't about chasing consistency in an inconsistent person. It's about choosing someone who meets you at the level of communication, effort, and presence that you've cultivated within yourself. Because let's be clear, not every man who goes silent is bad. Some are just unready, unaware, unpracticed, emotionally inarticulate, raised in systems that never taught them how to hold space for feelings, their own or anyone else's. But again, that doesn't mean you're required to fix, teach, or wait. Your job is to align. And alignment happens when your emotional values match, not just your chemistry. And while we're on that topic, let's dismantle a dangerous myth. But I feel a deep connection with him. Let me lovingly challenge you here. Feeling a connection with someone who doesn't communicate consistently is not enough. Chemistry is not commitment. Spark is not stability. Passion is not partnership. Your nervous system might crave him, especially if your attachment wounds are activated by emotional unpredictability. But craving is not the same as being loved well. And here's a wild truth. Sometimes, the people we feel most drawn to are the ones who unconsciously mirror our unhealed wounds. The ones who give just enough to keep us hooked, but not enough to make us feel safe. This is why you must ground yourself, because your feelings, while valid, are not always your guides. Sometimes they're maps to where you still need healing. So what do you do instead? You build your world. While he's in his silence, you build your structure. You reconnect with your own joy. You pour into friendships. You refocus on your goals. You give yourself the care and presence you were hoping to get from him. Because here's what that does. It reinforces your self-worth. Not as a theory, but as a practice. You stop proving. You start embodying. You stop begging. You start becoming. And the beauty of this is that it ripples out into every area of your life. The same steadiness you build in love becomes your clarity at work, your calm in family dynamics, your discernment in friendship. Because the skill isn't, how do I handle a silent man? It's, how do I hold on to myself in the presence of uncertainty? And when you master that, you become a force. Not because you're hard, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped disappearing from yourself. When you no longer disappear from yourself in the face of someone else's absence, you become a woman no man can forget. Not because you played a game, but because you stood in your truth. That truth? You are already whole. We need to say this clearly. You were never meant to orbit around someone else's life. You were born with your own axis, your own gravitational pull, your own world to build. But too many women, in the absence of attention, fall into the trap of waiting to be texted, chosen, validated. And here's where the final, deepest shift happens. You stop waiting. You start creating. You stop asking, why isn't he reaching out? And start asking, what can I reach for within myself? Because male silence, while often confusing, hurtful, and disorienting, is not your enemy. It's a mirror. It shows you where your sense of self still depends on someone else's actions. It shows you where you've outsourced your worth. It shows you where your own life needs more of you in it. And when you use that silence as a sacred pause to come back home to yourself, you shift the entire game. Let's break this down practically. What does it look like to live from wholeness? You wake up excited about your own goals, not anxious about his messages. You fill your calendar with purpose, not just dates and waiting. You nurture friendships, passions, health, and creativity, so no one man becomes the center of your emotional world. You check in with yourself more than you check your phone. This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming centered. Because being centered doesn't mean you don't love. It means you love from choice, not from need. It means you're not trying to get something from someone else. Attention, approval, identity. You're sharing your life from overflow, not lack. That is the woman no man can replace. Because she's not performing. She's not manipulating. She's not shrinking to fit into a man's availability. She's simply rooted in her own vision, energy, presence, and peace. Let's be honest, it takes courage to get here. It takes doing the emotional work. It takes choosing not to react in the moment of silence. It takes resisting the impulse to fix it with effort, charm, or over-communication. It takes asking the hard internal questions. What am I afraid I'll feel if I stop chasing? What emptiness have I been trying to cover with his attention? And it takes one of the hardest things of all. Accepting the truth, even when it hurts. Yes, sometimes his silence means disinterest. Yes, sometimes he doesn't care as much as you do. Yes, sometimes he doesn't know how to love you the way you deserve. And yes, that hurts. But do you know what hurts more? Wasting your brilliance, your beauty, your energy on someone who doesn't see you. You didn't come into this world to be someone's maybe. You didn't come to beg, prove, or convince. You came to radiate, to live, to lead, to create. And if someone can't meet you there, in your light, in your fullness, that is not a reflection of your inadequacy. It's a reflection of their capacity. Sometimes, the best thing someone can do for you is leave. Their absence becomes the space through which your real self is born. I've seen women rise from silence with more power than they ever imagined possible. I've seen them start businesses, travel alone, finish degrees, build new communities, deepen self-worth, develop skills, and reignite passions, all because one man went silent, and instead of collapsing, they chose to evolve. This is where your power lives, in your response. Will you chase? Will you shrink? Will you panic? Or will you pause, breathe, and ask, what can I build right now that belongs to me whether he returns or not? Because when you build that internal world, rich, radiant, grounded, it changes your external reality too. You start attracting different dynamics. You stop tolerating emotional crumbs. You no longer feel flattered by minimal effort. Your body begins to reject inconsistency the way it would reject poison. You become the woman who no longer asks, why isn't he reaching out? Because she's too busy reaching higher. Higher in self-worth. Higher in vision. Higher in who she allows into her life. And when, if, he returns, he meets a version of you that isn't the same. You're no longer the woman who needed his attention to feel beautiful, valued, or worthy. You're the woman who knows she is all of those things, with or without him. And sometimes, this is key. You no longer want him back. Not out of revenge, not out of pride, but because you've seen what life feels like when you're living from your own power. And you don't want to go back to a version of yourself that was small, waiting, dependent. This is your evolution. Not every woman gets here. But you can. You already are, if you're reading this far. So here's what I want you to do from now on. Every time the silence creeps in and you feel the temptation to react, stop and redirect. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? What project have I been avoiding? What friend haven't I reached out to? What part of my body needs care? What dream of mine needs more attention than his silence? And give that to yourself, today. Because the more you choose yourself in those moments, the more magnetic, peaceful, and aligned your life becomes. And here's the final truth I want you to remember. Etched into your heart, your power is not in whether he comes or goes. Your power is in whether you stay with yourself. Every time. No matter who leaves, no matter who stays silent, no matter who forgets to reach out. You don't lose value because someone else lost sight of it. You don't become less because someone else didn't choose you. You are not someone's second thought. You are your own first priority. So build the life, raise the standard, feel the fear and stay grounded anyway. Stop waiting to be chosen. You are the one who chooses. And that is a woman no man, or moment, can ever silence again.